So let's shift into the lesson of the week. And I've been doing a lot of calls lately with not just rainmakers, but also agents on a team. And obviously, as the market shifts, the things that have to shift with it is ultimately our skill set. And what I've become more and more aware of is that people just are not fluent in the language of sales, in really the language of influence. And if there has never been a person that I've ever come across that doesn't want more of two things. Everybody wants more time and everybody wants more money. And if you really think about what produces both more time and more money in your world, it's mastery. One of the biggest differences that you'll notice between a master and an amateur is just how quickly they ultimately get things done, right? And so what I wanted to walk you through today are two very simple ideas that will give you a path towards mastery in this language of sales, or the language of influence. If you don't like that term sales, you can sub that. So I want to give you two different insights into this. The first one is taking your frustrations and converting them to expectations. Taking your frustrations and converting them to expectations. Now, what I'm referring to here is in the context of your client relationships. So I was on a coaching call a few weeks ago with a showing partner, and he was telling me that so many of the people that he's showing today want to see almost everything on the market. And of course, in today's market, even with low inventory, you still need to shrink down and get really clear on just a few properties, because the inventory across the country is still moving at lightning speed. And so what I walked him through was, okay, you're frustrated with the buyers who want to see everything. So let's take that frustration and convert it into an expectation for future clients. And one principle that I've always found to be true, and I'll say this slowly, I would encourage you to write this down, is it is easier to prepare than it is to repair. And any frustration that you experience through a transaction with a client can help you prepare for the next one. Okay, so here's the way that I had converted this frustration to an expectation. Is the next time that he has a buyer that he does a consult with, or is beginning the process, is to say something like this: you know, one of the many mistakes that I'm seeing buyers of today make is this thinking that they need to see everything on the market. And that's the reason that so many people ultimately work with me. I'm a market expert. In fact, I look at anywhere between 35 to 45 homes every single month. And I know you're someone who wants to save both time and money. So what I'm going to do is narrow your focus to just 4 or 5 homes, because the more we look at, the more homes we see, the less clarity you're ultimately going to have. So we're going to narrow this to just 4 or 5 homes. And if you don't want to buy one of those 4 or 5, we're going to come back here, because obviously I've missed something. And I want to be very clear about what it is that I missed, so that we can take you directly to the home that you want to purchase. So what I want everybody to see there are a couple of things. One, the frustration of they want to go look at every house on the market. So I'm going to convert that to a future expectation, but I'm going to do it through story. And if you notice, there were a few key phrases. You know, one of the mistakes that I see people make. That's a great line, you guys, because there isn't a single person on the face of the planet that wants to make mistakes. So one of the mistakes I see people make is a critical phrase inside of this. And then you fill in the blank. And whatever you're filling in the blank with, you're going to follow it with, and quite frankly. And quite frankly, that's why so many people choose to work with me. Does everybody see that? just these very simple language patterns that create influence. It creates a new level of understanding. It doesn't mean that it's going to work every time. And yet, if we can get the number of homes that they're looking at from 12 to 5 or 12 to 6, again, that's going to decrease the amount of time out there showing properties and ultimately leading to the same result, which is somebody purchasing a home. So what is the frustration you can convert into an expectation? How can we prepare versus repair? And again, one of the mistakes that I see many people make, fill in the blank, and quite frankly, that's the language pattern that you can use. The other one, and this one is really important because it doesn't matter if we're talking in the context of clients or if we're talking in the context of coaching, everybody possesses 4 different mindsets. And many of you have heard me talk about this in the past. But if you're going to be a person of influence, if you're going to be a person that can ultimately help people make decisions that are best for them in the shortest amount of time, then you have to take responsibility for the mindset your communication elicits. You have to take responsibility for the mindset that you elicit. So let me walk you through this. The first mindset is fight. So that's when somebody gets defensive or argumentative with you. The second one is flight. That's when they kind of shut down, right? And this could happen in a very, active way where you just see them kind of sit back and now they're just giving you 1-syllable answers instead of giving you like full sentences. They start saying, yeah, no. That's somebody who you have created a flight mindset in. The third one is freeze. Now, freezing is when you've overloaded the circuitry. I made this mistake, and I still do sometimes in coaching people through machine gunning questions. So I'll say, how many listing leads did you generate? How many have you taken? And what's the pipeline look like for next month? I'll say that all into one question, which it just overloads the circuitry and they will freeze, right? Because they feel overwhelmed. And then lastly is freedom. And freedom is where we want people to be because we want them to be open and curious. Those are the 2 operative words, open and curious to whatever it is that we are trying to communicate to them. Now, remember what I said is that if you're going to be a person of influence, you want to take responsibility for the mindset your communication elicits. And every mindset is appropriate based on the circumstance. So if I'm walking through the woods, for example, and let's just say that I'm on the Appalachian Trail, I come across the corner, I've got a group of people with me, and I square up with a black bear, meaning the black bear turns and looks right at me. Is the appropriate mindset to go up and start like Chuck Norris fighting a black bear? Should I fight a black bear? No, not unprovoked. Should I turn around and run? Should I flee or enter a flight mindset? No, because what runs gets chased. Should I go up with like a freedom mindset and like, get over here, give me a big bear hug, you're God's creature, you're so amazing. Should I do that? No, right? The appropriate response, the appropriate mindset is to freeze. If somebody breaks into your house, right? And let's say that you're upstairs and your kids are downstairs, meaning you can't just jump out a window, the appropriate response is to fight. So there's always an appropriate response based on circumstances. And in sales, we are always attempting to get someone into a freedom mindset where they are open to what we ultimately have to say. And there's some really easy ways to do this, but the skill set that you want to learn is called framing. It's like framing a house. We frame a conversation or we frame a question so that the question incites the mindset that we ultimately want and avoids the ones we don't want. And I think this is so critical. When I used to coach coaches, they would come to me with these scenarios and I would ask them like, well, what question did you ask? Or what did you say when this person said that? And oftentimes they would hold back. They knew the right thing to ask. They knew the right thing to say, but they held back. And the reason why they held back is they didn't know how to get it from their head to their mouth without it inciting a fight, flight, or freeze mindset. And framing is the skill that allows you to do this. So, for example, if you're working with a new listing client, a great way to frame up or get a communication agreement prepare is to say something like, you know, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, I'm curious, as we work through this process, if I see something that is going to keep you from selling this home, how would you like for me to bring that up? And most of the time they're going to say, well, just tell me. Okay, cool. I'm going to frame it one step further. On a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being, or 0 being I'm candy coating everything, and 10 being I'm brutally honest. How would you like for me to be through this process? And they might say brutally honest. Okay, so one of the reasons that people choose me is that I tell the truth no matter how uncomfortable it is. I kind of think of myself like a real estate doctor. If you have an issue, I'm going to tell you. And so you're giving me permission to do that. Is that correct? Yes. So what I'm doing, everybody, is now I have that in my pocket. I'm going to, at some point, pull that out of my pocket and say, remember when you wanted me to be brutally honest about something I see that may keep your home from selling? Do you mind if I share with you what that is? Another line that I've used over the years, I don't do this so much anymore, but another line that I've used to frame conversations and elicit a freedom mindset is, do I have enough relationship equity with you to be really direct and candid? And that you know it comes from a place of me really caring about you and wanting the best for you. See, that question, even if they don't like what I'm about to say, they're giving me permission, and permission is the door or the gate to a freedom mindset. And so at first glance, anytime you're working through something like this, the 4 mindsets, it can feel a little bit clunky. You can stumble a little bit. And yet framing is the way that you can continue to get ideas and questions and have tough conversations and all those things through without inciting a mindset that causes them to fight, flee, or freeze. So those 2 ideas are 2 that I would encourage you, whether we're talking about buyers and sellers, or you're coaching people in your team, or you're even coaching people in your family. Like, that was one of the smartest things that I learned as being a parent, is that when my daughters, like, for example, my daughter Zoe on the soccer field this last Saturday, she heard a whistle on another field and stopped. And she was the last defender between a forward and the goal, and the forward ended up scoring. And she was really upset about it initially. And so I said to her, you know, there's a lesson in this, and when you're ready to hear it, you let me know, because I would love to share it. There's a lesson in this, and when you're ready to hear it, I would love to share it. But see, what I'm doing is I'm waiting for her to give me permission, instead of just saying, hey, if regardless of the whistle, if the ref doesn't pick up the ball, right, just keep going. So it works no matter what context we're talking about: clients, coaching members of your team, or with your family. And the other, as I mentioned before, frustration to expectation. Whatever you're getting frustrated by, convert that to a future expectation. But those 2 things are 2 foundational pieces I think that you could employ in order to become fluent in the language of sales, becoming a master of communication and influence, which will ultimately help you save time and make more money. So I trust that this was helpful. Looking forward to talking with those of you that I have coaching calls with today. If you're in Modern Men, I'll see you this week. And we'll be right back here next week for Monday Morning Mojo. We will have that call next week. Thank you, everybody. Make it a great week. Bye-bye.